Welcome back. In this video, we'll be discussing for loops within C++. So for loops are used in coding to enable reusability, reduce redundancy, and to help make code shorter. So how does that even work? So let's say we wanted to perform an action 15 times. Instead of individually writing out each action 15 times, we can just use a for loop and it'll create an action for us 15 times in just a few lines of code. So let's see how that works in C++. So first, let's set up our IDE and let's say include IOmanip, include IOmanip, and let's include the string, include string, and let's use namespace std, and then let's get rid of the extra code, and that's how we set it up. So here's the format for loops. So first you have for, and then you have a start condition, and then you have a semicolon, and then you have an end condition, and then you have iterations. So how much the condition or how much your start condition will change by each time. Then you have curly brackets, and then within your curly brackets, you have code that will execute a certain number of times. So again, we can think of this as having three parts. So first, a start condition, and then an end condition, and what it will go up until. And if that end condition is ever met, or if it's met early, if the condition is not true at any point throughout the loop, the whole loop will stop. And the iteration is basically how much we're going by each time. So let's look at some examples of some for loops. So the first example, we can do for, and then int I is equal to 0, and then I, as long as I is less than 10, and I plus. So this means that I will start at 0, it'll increment by 1 each time, so we can also put I plus equals 1, and the code will run as long as I is less than 10. So what will that actually look like? We'll have 0, we'll have 1, we'll have 2, we'll have 3, we'll have 4, we'll have 5, we'll have 6, we'll have 7, we'll have 8, and we'll have 9, but we won't have 10 because 10 is not greater than 10. And if you actually see this, that gives us 10 values. So this for loop will run 10 times. So let's look at another example. So for int I is equal to 0, semicolon, I is less than 10, and the way that we do that is through the word and. I mod 2, which we talked about in the previous video, mod 2 is equal to 0, and we can put another parentheses around this, and a bigger parenthesis around all of this, and a semicolon, and then we'll put I plus equals 2. And basically what this is telling us is that it has to be less than 10, and it has to be an even number, and we're incrementing by 2 each time. So let's say we start at 0, we add 2, and we get 2. Is 2 mod 2 equal to 0? Yes. Is it less than 10? Yes. So we go to 4, and then the same conditions are met, 6, and then 8, but we can't go to 10 because 10 is not, although 10 mod 2 is equal to 0, 10 is not less than 10. And let's look at our final example. For int I is equal to 10, and then I is greater than or equal to 5, and then I minus equals 3. So this means that we're subtracting 3 from I each time, and I starts at 10. So we have 10, and then we have 7, and then we have 4. So 4 does not work because 4 is not greater than 5. So this for loop will only run 2 times for 10 and 7. So ultimately, the most important thing to realize is that once this condition is made false even once, the entire for loop will stop. So you have to make sure you're accounting for that. So now let's talk about another type of loop, which is called a while loop. And this basically repeats code forever until a condition is met. So this is used whenever we don't know how many times we want to run a code, but we want to make sure it's running until something is wrong. So let's look at a real world example of this. So let's say we're a developer of a website and we have a password and login like mechanism. So we want to keep allowing the user to try over and over again until the password is correct. So we'll use a while loop. We'll say as long as the password is incorrect, we'll keep allowing the user to have trials. But as soon as the correct password is met, we'll stop giving them tries. And what's really important is that condition has to be met, or else the loop will just run on forever and ever, and that's never a good thing. So let's look at the syntax for a while loop. So we have while, and then we have the condition here that we want to eventually reach, and then we have our code in between. So let's look at an example of this. So we'll set int x is equal to 0, and we'll set int y is equal to 10, and we'll say while y is greater than or equal to 0, then we'll do x equals x plus 2, semicolon, and we'll say y equals y minus 1. So what's really important in this context is that y is getting shorter from 10, so it will eventually reach 0. So let's see out x, and let's see what we will get. But let's try to work through it first. So at it will run 10 times essentially, because we have 10 as y, then we have 9, then we have 8, then we have 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's 10 times. But then one thing is that it will also include 0. So if we do, that will give us an 11th term. So it should give us 11 times 2, which is 22. So x should equal 22. And as we see, we get 22. And then finally, there's a very similar context to this or concept to this, and it's called a do while statement. And it's essentially the same thing as a while loop, but the syntax is just different. So here's how it is. It's do, and then we have the condition here, or what we will do. And then we have while here, and then we have the condition we are checking for. And I'll comment this out too. And we'll just delete this, or let's use this example as our do while loop. So we'll say do, and then x plus 2, y minus 1, and we'll shift that over to here. So x equals x plus 2, and y equals y minus 1. And then our while condition is while y is greater than 0. And let's run this, and we should get 22 as well. And we just put a semicolon at the end of this line. And as you can see, we get 22 as well. So that's all we have for loops within C++. I hope you learned something new, and thank you for sticking till the end of the video.